I'm running primarily to support Kenneth as LA Controller.
We'll take it.
I'm running on three big issues. One, and as we've seen this week, it's really important. The city attorney should be the person that's holding everybody accountable, making sure there's no corruption taking place in City Hall. Yet the city attorney basically is absent at the wheel, always has been, and nobody thinks the city attorney can hold the City Hall accountable. Well, I will, starting with LAPD. And I'm also running to bring about criminal justice reform in Los Angeles. It's about time we do it on the misdemeanor level. George is doing it on the felony level, and we need to do it on the misdemeanor level. And lastly, but certainly not least, I'm running to make sure that everybody knows we cannot and will not criminalize poverty. 4118 is awful, and being homeless is not a criminal issue, and I will make sure that nobody is criminalized for that. So those are the big reasons I'm running.
Hey everybody, I am not Hugo. My name is Walker. I'm the field director, so all the canvassing, the phone banking, the postcard writing, that's me. And I'll just tell you myself and then tell you a little about Hugo. I, for the last 10 years, have basically been doing climate organizing in Los Angeles. I cut my teeth organizing with the residents of Carson against a project to drill 200 wells in their community. We killed it back in 2015. And then we heard the call to go up to the North San Fernando Valley where there was another oil field expansion plan. And while we were about to launch our canvassing program to go talk to neighbors about human health in the district and funny smells that they've been experiencing, the Aliso Canyon gas storage facility operated by SoCalGas blew out. So for the next 5 years, we launched a massive campaign that held Governor Brown accountable, carried that over into Gavin Newsom, and that campaign has sought some justice, not all. We're still fighting for residents up in the San Fernando Valley and surrounding area, but it has changed the conversation on whether or not gas is actually clean tech and viable for the future of California on the grid. And we're winning so far. The reason I am on this campaign is because for so long, for as long as I've been going, labor and the climate justice movement have been at odds with each other. And the voice that we missed this entire time was someone who could bridge that divide between two communities. I've been working with Hugo for over 1.5 years. I've worked on previous campaigns for the minimum wage, for the Hollywood Community Plan with him. He has spent his whole career fighting for working class people in the hospitality and services industry, which has had enormous benefits to working people in Hollywood. And we are fighting right now for this seat because Mitch O'Farrell and before him Garcetti have been gentrifying CD13 and showing the rest of Los Angeles how to get away with it. And on November 8th, we're going to put an end to it.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. So we can just sit down. So this first question is a question for all of you. You guys can just raise your hand and pass it around. However you want to really do this is, during your campaign, how have you involved young people? And if elected, would you continue to involve youth in decision making, either in the issues your office would tackle or the policies you would introduce? What roles would you play in making sure polluters pay for environmental destruction, and make sure corporations are responsible for plastic waste, or reliance on fossil fuels, and the current system of non-sustainable products? So, who wants to go?
So, for your first question about getting the youth involved, I think our campaign is led by the youth. Shout out to all the youth on our team here. I know I see all of y'all here. Made with, Gen Zers, millennials, who are really, really guiding this campaign, whether it's our funny TikToks, our tweets, or bomb videos. The youth are really, they're the future, and they're the ones who have gotten us this far. So definitely want to keep incorporating them into our campaign, and also when we win in November. For your second point, as city controller, we definitely want to hold City Hall accountable, especially when it comes to their goals in reaching, the Green New Deal or on a future that's 100% clean renewable energy. Because right now, the city of LA, there's not a really good timeline or tracking of that, of our performance. And so, as city controller, I want to do that. I want to continue what the current controller did, which is do an analysis on uncapped wells and seeing what the city's doing to actually make sure that these oil companies are capping them and taking care of these neighborhoods, because many of these neighborhoods are in communities of color, and they're the ones who are suffering health-wise too. So that's what we'll do.
So to answer your first question, my campaign manager is sitting right there, Maddie, who is, she's a youth. And she is basically leading our campaign, and she's doing a fantastic job. And I mean, we get them at all ages. I have my 4-year-old daughter coming out canvassing with me. And, she was a little under the weather, otherwise I would have had her here. So, the youth are the future. And you guys are doing a great job in the environmental justice movement and holding everybody accountable. Now, to answer your second question, I've got a very big and robust plan for environmental justice. I want to have 2 offices. Right now, there's an environmental justice office in the city attorney's office, but they haven't really been doing as much as they can or as much as they should. And under my leadership, they will. And then there's also another office, it's called the Affirmative Litigation Division, which goes out and affirmatively sues on behalf of the city of Los Angeles. What worries me right now is all the oil wells that are there. Yes, we've made a rule that we're going to cap all of them, but we all know how these corporations are going to go. They're really not going to do that unless somebody really goes out there and holds their feet to the fire. They're going to want to do it on the cheap. They're not going to want to do it the correct way to have zero environmental impact. And I want to make sure that they do. So that's going to be one of my #1 goals, to make sure that all the oil wells that are being shut down are doing correctly. And I will go after the corporations and hold them accountable, including, if I can, charge them with criminal action. And trust me, I will find a way.
Awesome, thank you. Can we just take a second to appreciate all the youth in politics right now? Whether it's canvassing, campaign managing, I mean, it's awesome.
Thank you. I'm proud to say we've got youth leaders on the campaign. We have a 15-year-old who reached out to us for an unpaid internship. I laughed at the email and then I gave her a paying job. And she's been fantastic. She's learning a lot about organizing skills. We talk about okay, so after November 8th, what are your goals moving forward? How do you move this leadership in? We just had a youth leader who was with us, but then went to college. We still do mentorship meetings with him every other week, though, because he's now organizing at his school. But that is the kind of commitment we have to everyone we bring on the team. We don't just hire canvassers. We have weekly meetings. We talk about investing in leadership skills, and we train people, because more than anything else, we want to give people organizing skills. And in office, what we are floating is how we might put together a youth leadership development corps, or some kind of commission in the district where we can bridge high schools and other spaces where we can get youth from across the district talking to each other, so that together they can be a voice in how we're addressing solutions. And to the other thing, issues, I mean, I'm glad you two said what you did, because for me, we have a plastic bag ban, but what is that really? We have a plastic straw ban, but what is that? We need enforcement. We need outreach to the business community. We need folks like Kenneth Mejia doing the auditing to make sure that there's programming for that. We need people like Faisal in the city attorney's office to make sure that that outreach from that end happens in terms of enforcing all of that. And then just to some other points, we gotta cap these wells. We have 500 in CD13, abandoned, idle, or otherwise, and they gotta go. And we gotta start having those conversations and being aggressive on it, because they are poisoning our communities. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we're just gonna go straight into our next question, and I'm gonna just
Closer to the mic, please.
Kind of keep up with time, but how will you ensure that you hear and amplify the voices of those typically ignored and disenfranchised, and even criminalized? So youth, indigenous people, Black people, Latino, AAPI, queer folk, etc.
Great question. This forum right now on the environment, our environmental platform is written by impacted communities. And we're very proud, and it was built by the youth as well. And so, that's how we're trying to get people involved in the decision-making process. We are working on an indigenous platform, and we are, in consultation with indigenous community leaders as well to help us with that. So I think it's important, if you're running for office or you're in office, don't just make a platform based on what you think it should be, but actually work with people who are on the receiving end of these terrible political policies, right? And so, that's how we're trying to incorporate impacted communities and voices. And our campaign is really diverse as well. And, I'm proud of that. And, we hope our when we win in the controller, it'll be the same thing too. So, that's how we've been able to incorporate impacted communities.
So one of the commitments that I've made on the campaign trail is before any major policy initiative is launched from the city attorney's office, we will meet with outside groups and community leaders, and especially impacted communities. So if we're making a major criminal justice reform policy, we're going to meet with folks who are, in reentry, or folks who have had a criminal record in the past, or folks who are working with them. It just only makes sense to see, okay, what does this policy do? Does it achieve the impact that we're trying to achieve? That's what we're going to do. So we're going to be having a lot of meetings with impacted communities all over and all major policies. We want them to be at the table. We don't want them just to receive the policy and say, okay, this is what Vasco Gil said. We want them to be there helping us write the policy. And that's, I think, the best way to make sure that they're at the table and their voices are heard.
Again and again and again, what we're hearing out on the doors is that Mitch O'Farrell never calls us back. Mitch O'Farrell hasn't been here since his last election. One of his biggest offenses is that he enacts these sweeping policies, whether it's a raid on a park or throwing up a fence afterward, without talking to anyone in the community that isn't giving him a $500 plus donation. People have been shut out of City Hall, and I know, maybe we can all identify with this. We all go do the outreach work, and we hear people who are like, well, why would I vote? It's not going to impact anything. And that's because we are not engaging our communities in the solutions. Ugo is an organizer, I'm an organizer, a lot of people on the team have been doing this work for a while. And for us, the problem is the solution. We want to go directly to the communities who are impacted. We want to involve them in the decision-making process. And we want to co-create solutions together. That's how we've built our campaign. That's how we want to run our office.
Thank you. So now I'm just going to do questions in a list, you guys. But so starting with Kenneth, how can you utilize your office to advance fiscal accountability of the public institutions in regards to the climate crisis?
Great question. I think the current controller has done a great job in mapping out all the active, uncapped, or idle wells. I think, unfortunately, there hasn't been like a current update on the progress of these companies who have capped them or not. In addition, there hasn't been like a large financial analysis on capping these wells. I also think too that as city controller, one of the biggest movements right now is to take our tax dollars and divest from oil companies, right? Our treasury is huge, billions of dollars, and we shouldn't be investing our tax dollars in problematic companies. And so that's another thing too I want to analyze and bring that transparency as well. And then, like I said in the first question, our biggest goal is to sort of provide like an online database that tracks the city's progress in reaching our goals, whether that's the Green New Deal, whether that's Vision Zero, or anything environmentally related, because people want to know how the city's moving towards a more environmental friendly city.
And if I wanted to access this database, how would I get to it?
Great question. I mean, so right now we have, by the way, we have a genius here named Kyler. Shout out to Kyler. If you have ever heard of our website or our resources, this guy, we met him when he was 17, and he built all our websites. So he built the affordable housing map. He built the police stop map. He built. So shout out to Kyler. He's the youth, and pretty much that's what we want to do. We want to create these websites that are accessible. If people don't have technology, we'd love to put up information, if the city will let us put up some cheap billboards on facts or where to learn information or do some sort of outreach, whether that's through email or through town halls, just so people are just aware of this information. And like what Walker said, pretty much our current politicians, they're not really good at returning phone calls or doing these community events, and that's what we want to do. We want to make sure we're always accessible to the community and let them know we're here.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, great, next one. How can you utilize your office to advance legal accountability of private and closer? You can't hear me? Sorry, guys. How can you utilize your office to advance legal accountability of private and public institutions in regards to the housing crisis? Sorry.
Look, the biggest thing that I can do is enforcement. There are so many ordinances out there that protect tenants right now that are just not being enforced. I mean, in fact, yesterday I was just talking to a community activist group in Chinatown who were basically saying that they had all these problems with their landlords forcing them out, not fixing anything. They complained to Gil Cedillo, but of course we know what he was doing, and nothing has happened. So, and I promised them that, look, we're going to be there and we're going to be enforcing it, and they're very, very fortunate to have a great new council member coming in Ulysses, who's going to be fantastic. So us working with, great council members like Ulysses and Hugo and others, we're going to be able to enforce these statutes to prevent people from becoming homeless. That's the number one thing. We've got to prevent them from becoming homeless. And then second is, what I'm not going to enforce is people who are already on the street being charged with the police to basically, go to jail. That's not going to, I say this all the time. The last time I checked, nobody has gone to jail and come out with a house. So how are we going to solve the homelessness crisis? By putting people in jail. So enforcing the ordinances that protect tenants right now, that's the number one thing. And also, lastly, making sure the development process is not corrupted, because that is also a huge thing. We have these affordable housing units that I don't know who they're affordable to, but they're not really affordable. We want to make sure that we hold the developers' feet to the fire.
And so, as a young person living in LA and trying to navigate housing, oh, sorry. What would you recommend somebody who's either being evicted or having trouble with their landlords? Where do you recommend they go? Who do you recommend they talk to? Because obviously we've had a not great track record going to the people who are supposed to protect us from this.
So one of the things that I'm going to do in the city attorney's office is basically have, I've got and again, I'm going to work with everybody here to try to figure out how we set this up, but some sort of a hotline or some sort of a mechanism where people can call in and say, look, here are the problems we're having in this housing unit. So tenants know. And then we're going to be out there in the community. My deputy city attorneys are going to be out there in the community to areas that we think are being impacted to let them know that, look, here are your rights. Just because a landlord says, oh, I've got to do construction, so you have to move out, doesn't mean that you have to move out. So we want to let people know their rights. So we're going to have mechanisms there. We're going to get Kyler over there to set up a good website for the city attorney's office that's going to let people know where they can come to and where they can seek resources.
So moral of the story, go to Kyler if you need something.
Absolutely, anything electronic.
Thank you, Kyler. And then the last one is, so in 2021, hundreds of protesters, journalists, and unhoused community members were arrested and brutalized by LAPD at Echo Park Lake within your district under Mitch O'Farrell's. What is your position on these actions, and how do you address factors such as community safety, the 4118 policy, and more broadly the city's approach towards homelessness?
Echo Park Lake was egregious. And if you read the UCLA report that came out and the email chains that they discovered, you see exactly the thinking that went in that. Expediency for wealthier people in the district who had been complaining. That is not the way you run public policy. That is not the way you treat human beings. And one of the reasons that contributed to so many people living in that park over time is because CD13 has been rapidly gentrifying. Mitch O'Farrell's donors, sorry, I'm a little nervous. Over 50% of Mitch O'Farrell's donors came from big real estate. And I'm not talking like local companies to LA. I'm talking like Wall Street landlords who are looking at this as like broad swaths of land for business investment. 60% of the people who end up homeless for the very first time ended up there because they couldn't make a rent check. And people go to encampments because it's a place to find community at the absolute worst moment of your life. And Mitch O'Farrell and several others on city council, their approach has been to sweep it away so that it's not visible and so that their donor class doesn't come after them. Our approach is to work with service providers, to work with folks living in encampments to understand why and what the complications are with some of the offerings that we've been giving to people in the last couple of years, and collaboratively coming up with solutions that best get people on the pathway. And I'm really excited because when we win, we're going to be sharing borders with Nithya Raman, we're going to be sharing borders with Eunices Hernandez, and with these recordings, there might be like opportunities for other progressives to sweep council. We might finally be able to get rid of 4118.
Yes.
And I also think like 4118, the travesty of this is it lets the council members off in a way that allows them to continue to perpetuate harms within their districts. When you sweep people, you're just moving them around block to block, we know this, but you're also pushing them into other people's districts. And if you are not collaboratively working on solutions to housing and homelessness outside of your own borders and without a city-focused approach, it's never going to get any better. And so what we want to do is take the organizers' approach, actually work in good faith with our colleagues on city council, and lead with services to help people back on the path, you know?
Thank you. Thank you. So I think now we want to just open it up to audience questions. So if anybody has a question for our, hello? I can't see. Oh.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Hi, I'm Nico, he, him. I'm the political lead at Sunrise. We've actually been working with Youth Climate Strike on creating a People's Green New Deal pledge that we sent to all of our candidates in advance. So some of the stuff that is in this pledge includes a Housing for All platform and an end to the criminalization of homelessness, complete streets with fare-free public transit, care, not cops, community green spaces, climate justice, good jobs for all, divestment of public funds from fossil fuels, and of course, Green New Deal policies that lead to 100% fossil fuel free by 2030. So my question is, can you commit here and now to taking this pledge and supporting the Green New Deal, a true Green New Deal in Los Angeles, not whatever Eric Garcetti invented.
PLAN, plan.
Yes.
Yes.
100%, yeah.
Does anybody else have a question for our wonderful candidates over here?
I need an easy one like that one.
Can you start tomorrow?
Sure. How will you implement policies to specifically expand and implement the Mobility Plan 2030? And how you will expand fare-free public transit, work with the Los Angeles Metropolitan Board Transit Authority, and how will you expand bike lanes in the city of Los Angeles as fast as possible?
It's a tough question, Kyler. Thank you. Just kidding. I think from a controller standpoint, I think we want to move forward with a mobility plan and move towards a city that is less car-centric and more people-centric. And so, like I said, for us as the controller, since we are the watchdog and we're the person or the office that provides analysis, would love to put an analysis on how our progress is going, not only on Vision Zero, but more specifically on what we're doing to implement more bike lanes and more bus lanes, fixing our sidewalks and our streets so that pedestrians have that safety and ability to actually get around town. In addition, just think about ways and measure the city's progress on moving away from cars, because it always seems like we're trying to expand like another lane or something, and that takes away from moving towards more public transit or bike options. And so, for the city controller too, I'd also want to do an analysis on how much money we're actually investing our tax dollars when it comes to these implementations around mobility or transit.
So I'd love to have more of a role in this policy, but my city attorney, the role is going to be, one, to make sure that there are no legal impediments to getting those policies that sometimes automatically come up. So I want to make sure that I'll work with council members to make sure none of those exist. And then also, once the policies are there, like bike lane and stuff, I want to make sure that enforcement is there so riders can be safe. So the mobility policy is safe for all. So I think those are the two things that the city attorney can do in this to make sure that the mobility policy.
Yeah, we got to move with haste to make up for the last 10 squandered years in CD13. We have one of the most progressive districts in the city. I think not the majority, but the largest amount of signatures that got gathered in any single district for the Healthy Streets LA initiative happened in our district. And still, this conversation has atrophied so much under Mitch O'Farrell that we have groups of people who are painting their own crosswalks because their streets are too dangerous. And it's not a priority to put bike lanes in for Mitch, but it is a priority to repaint those crosswalks black. We are going to take an organizer's approach to this. We are already meeting with organizations on the ground who are identifying for us where those solutions are, but what we want to do is begin to immediately implement the mobility plan, make up for lost time, start connecting all these little bike fragments of bike infrastructure that exist. We want to work with Metro to make public transit free and to make our trains and buses run on a faster schedule. And so, look, the median income in CD13 is $38,000 a year, give or take. 70% of Metro's ridership makes less than $30,000 a year. Working people cannot afford to live where they work. They need to rely on transit and other ways to get there. We need to make that accessible and affordable for them to take. And if we do that, ridership's going to increase. And yeah, I might also add we need to maybe stop enforcing tap charges. Why do we need to introduce a pipeline to the carceral system in our metros and on our buses? It's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, we're going to fight for Healthy Streets LA. We are going to implement the mobility plan, and we're going to do it with some haste.
Wow, that was good.
Thank you, everybody. It was really nice to talk to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to folks who just joined and folks who have been here for a while. We scheduled a break for this section, but since we started a little late, we're going to go straight into the second section. So we just heard from folks who are running for city positions. Now we'll be hearing from folks who are running for county-wide positions. And before I get into that, though, I do really want to give a quick shout out to Zara, who is just the moderator. She did not know that she would be moderating until about 5 minutes before she started moderating, and she absolutely killed it. So big shout out to Zara. Big shout out to all of our youth organizers here tonight. My name is Shekinah. I am a little bit of an older youth organizer, but I'd like to say I'm still a youth organizer. I am from San Fernando Valley. And I'm really excited to be with all of you tonight. And I'm excited to bring up some very special candidates. So first we have folks that are running for our Superior Court judicial seats. We have Anna, who's right over here. We have Holly Hancock. Elizabeth Lashley Hayes. We have Carolyn Young in spirit. She couldn't make it because she is double booked, but we know she cares about us, and she wanted to hear everybody's questions. And I believe we have somebody here on behalf of Lindsay Horvath. Yes? Awesome. And then lastly, County, this is not a county-wide position, but this is a city position that's within Los Angeles County, and we have somebody running for Inglewood City Council, and that is Bobby Brown. Thank you so much for all of you joining us tonight. I know a lot of people didn't get their invites till this week, and so the fact that you prioritized us this much really means the world to us. Yeah, can we get another round of applause for that? Awesome. So we'll go straight into introductions first. So if you could all introduce yourself, the position that you are running for, the person you're here on behalf of, and then why did you decide to run for this specific position?
Hello, I am Bobby Brown. I'm running for City Council in Inglewood, District 2. I'm running because the incumbent has gone unopposed for the last decade. There's a whole bunch of nepotism going on in Inglewood. We are a small enough city to where we can get the power back to the people. I'm trying to do the best that I can to make that happen. And prioritize the people and actually be an advocate and amplify the voices of our residents that somehow got lost in the mix of the current council. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I'm Anna Slaki-Ritano. I'm running for Judge of the Superior Court, seat 60, office 60. I'm running because, I'm running because you know, it's time for a change. I saw a need. I think we've had the same people running for judge for the past 20 years, and it's time to have experience, different types of experience with the, you know, least powerful people in our communities. In the past, I think almost 80% of judges elected were all prosecutors. They're all coming from one background. The rest of the judges elected were already judges. It's time for a public defender. It's time to have someone with experience with mental health issues, poverty, and all the things that come with poverty. And we need fair people on the bench. So I'm trying to change something by being one of the three public defenders, or well, there's going to be four, but one of the three public defenders on the Defenders of Justice. We're trying to offer an alternative.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Holly Hancock, and I'm running for the judicial seat of number 70. And I am a deputy public defender and have been a deputy public defender for the last 16 years. I am, can you hear everybody? Okay. For the last 16 years, and for the last 2 years, I'm the deputy in charge of the homeless mobile unit for record clearing, and record clearing just means expungements, if that's a word that you guys have heard of. When people are done with their cases, done with their probation, parole, done with everything, then they can come to us, or we come to them, really. We go out on the street because we're mobile. We have units that are mobile, vehicles and people, and get their records expunged. That's so that they can get housing. That's so that they can get jobs. Without that, it's going to be very difficult. So I've been doing that for the last 2 years. It's the best part of my career. I mean, I do like to go to trial and win, but this has also been the best part of my career. Now, I'm bringing a different perspective because I work with people and I work with the community. And it's really important for you to know you are electing your neighborhood judge. You are electing the judge who will sit in your community and tell you about your life. And that can be in family court, criminal court, dependency court, probate court. It can be in all these different courts that we can be placed in. We don't really get to pick. They kind of put us where they need us. And the bottom line is, you want somebody who's worked with people. And unfortunately, prosecutors prosecute. They file things and they go to trial on things and they give offers based upon how much can I get from, how can I extract the most pound of flesh from this individual. And I work to give solutions. I work the long term. to give solutions when I was in trials and when I've been with the homeless mobile unit. So thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, I'm Holly Hancock, and I'm running for Judicial Seat 670.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Lashley Haynes, and I'm one of the defenders of justice, and I'm running for seat 67. Thank you so much for the invitation. Such a pleasure to be here. It's especially a pleasure because my daughter's here with me. She chose to come with me to this rather than go to something where her friends were, which felt really good for me. I think the reason why I'm running is I'm frankly trying to disrupt a pipeline I saw. There's several different pipelines, but the most blatant one is we have a pipeline of prosecutor to judge. And they get to a certain point in their career and they just think it's the next phase for them. And I don't think people are seeing in our efforts to reform criminal justice and in our efforts to get rid of cash bail and to deal with mass incarceration, I think the forgotten piece was the judges, and that realizing that the last step was the gatekeepers, the judges. And if they're not sharing the values that we have as a community, that the youth have in getting rid of cash bail and reducing mass incarceration, then we need to start electing new people. The day that I really decided to run, I'll tell you a quick story about that, and I think it explains a lot about me. So I've been a public defender, just like my colleagues here, for about 20 years now. I currently litigate the Racial Justice Act. It's a new law that started in 2021, where I get to bring claims of bias and racial prejudice that infect people's cases, whether that's in trial. I also get to use data and statistics, so I get really excited hearing about Kenneth and all of his plans, because I get to pull data and show how disproportionately certain racial groups get filed upon. I get to show how disproportionately they get sentenced. And that's been sort of the most exciting part of my career thus far. But I had one case where I brought a claim, a Racial Justice Act claim. And what I showed was that according to the prosecution's own data, 86% of this particular charge, the arrests and the charging were African American men, 86%. And I had an expert crunching those numbers, even though African American population in the county of Los Angeles was 9%. And I had the judge, I was breaking this all down, and the judge responded to me, an older white male judge who had been around for a long time, and he responded and he said, "Counsel, the one thing you're not taking into account is just that certain racial groups commit crimes more often than others." Right. It was that day that I went home, talked to people, and decided to run. So I thought at that point, and that's it.
I'm going to stay seated if that's okay. I'm Nick, everyone. I am here on behalf of Lindsay Horvath, and thank you for having this and putting this together. It's amazing. It's great to be up here with the three of you. These are really, really important positions, and we talk about in the campaign trail that judge and supervisor are kind of the sleepy races that no one really talks about. And sometimes you have that one friend that you call who knows everything, and they're like, "Here's who you vote for judge and supervisor." So it's great to be out and to talk about what these positions are. Lindsay's running for supervisor in District 3, which is a lot of West LA, the entire San Fernando Valley, west all the way to Malibu, and until it becomes Ventura County. So it's a really big district, 2 million people. Lindsay got into the race because, she is a local problem solver who just wants to improve her community and make LA County a sustainable and just place for everyone. She has served on the West Hollywood City Council twice as mayor during the pandemic and as well as earlier on. She also is one of the founding board members of the Clean Power Alliance, which some people may get their power from this building, which is essentially all of your power is renewable. It's amazing. And there are, do I need to hold it closer? Okay, great.
But Lindsay is running because these issues are too important. We need someone on the board who is young. She's a renter. There's not a single renter on the board of supervisors. And bringing these voices into the room is really, really, really important. There are huge issues at the county. Climate is a really big one. The county sustainability plan is there, but it has to be implemented. There has to be the political will at the county to fully fund the sustainability plan. And the county also oversees the sheriff's department, and making sure that we have someone who is willing to hold the sheriff accountable is really important. You know, we've seen everything that's happened these past few months, or the past few years really, with the current sheriff, he who shall not be named. And she's worked with him in her city, and she knows how to hold the sheriff accountable in the situation that he is reelected. But that's why we're passing Measure A in November to make sure that the board can remove the sheriff. And yeah, thank you. Looking forward to talking about more.
Thank you. Okay, fun. So thank you all for answering that question and introducing yourselves. I hadn't ordered to questions, but as you all were talking, I was like, I have a million more questions I want to ask now. So I will start with this. All of you mentioned that you are running because there is a change that you desperately need to see in these spaces. We can start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about Lindsay Horvath's campaign and the change that she is trying to create on the county level, and not just for the county, but within like the systems of how the Board of Supervisors run as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sheila Kuehl, the current supervisor, has done a really incredible job. She is a trailblazer, a progressive trailblazer who has crossed a lot of boundaries. She's pushed policy at the county. She was one of the main pushers of Care First, Jails Last, and that is part of the change that you know, needs to continue. There are a lot of really amazing things happening in the county, and as much as we have to keep moving forward, there's also the threat of moving backwards, and particularly in this race, the threat of moving backwards is very, very possible with our opponent, who is, you know, supported by many, many, many different groups that we do not want bringing us backwards, including every law enforcement association in LA County. So part of what change means electing a new generation of leaders, electing someone who is a renter, electing people who have experienced firsthand what it's like to need constituent services, people who are transit dependent. And living in West Hollywood, Lindsay has been a champion of the Crenshaw North expansion, so it means expanding transit, especially in the San Fernando Valley, because we need to talk about transit equity and what that means for people in this district. But a lot of that change, you know, when it comes to transit, when it comes to public health and mental health, which are the two largest departments that are funded by the county. So funding those and making sure that we are deploying mental health teams, we are deploying public health teams for crisis response to make sure that people that are unhoused, that are suffering from addiction or mental health issues are getting that help. But it also means expanding those services for everyone in LA County. And that's the change that she wants to continue. And when it comes to climate change especially, there are all of these amazing things that have happened in the county, whether it's the sustainability plan or whether it's Measure W, or whether it's like making sure that we push the state to shut down Aliso Canyon. Those are not going to happen if we take a step back this election. So, you know, climate, health, transportation, those are the three big issues that we have to keep moving forward on.
Thank you. And for our judicial candidates, a similar question. If there was one thing you could change about the LA Superior Court system or process, what would you change? How would you change it and why?
Oh, gosh. There's so very many. That is a difficult question. I think the one thing that I guess I would change, or that I'm hoping to see happen, or I am hoping is sort of my dream to implement, if that can qualify as a change, is I really want a move towards restorative justice, which is a totally different theoretical framework than the one that we're currently working under. You know, the whole American criminal legal system's process has been prosecute, convict, incarcerate. And a true restorative justice program, I mean, people throw that term around a lot, but if you really dig deep into it, it changes everything about the way that we go about this system. I think one of the difficult things is that what we've seen is that victims in court are very often marginalized folks. They're very often women, people of color, underprivileged folks. And the prosecutors who we're running against, they act as if they're their champions, but in reality, we know that what happens is the more marginalized the victim is, the more they get ignored by the prosecutor. And so this actually takes victims of crime and brings them into the courtroom and has their voice be important, you know? So they get centered, and it's like, you're the harmed party, what do you need to feel whole, right? And then there's things like apologies and reparations made, and then the healing can begin from there. But, you know, one of the most striking things that happened to me is I had a case, it was a residential burglary that's considered very serious in our courts, right? My client was looking at years and years in prison. And the victim, a young woman who lived in a Hollywood apartment, her house was broken into, came to court. She was like begging to talk to me and explain to me, she said, you know, when he came into my apartment, she's like, I wasn't scared. She said, he was not scary. He was having some type of episode. She said, my brother has mental health issues. She's like, he had mental health problems, you know, or something was going on. And she was like, I don't want him to go to prison. I want to see him get treatment, you know. And I said, you have to talk to the prosecutor and tell them that. She's like, I have, and they're not listening to me. And that is just, we see that over and over. So what I would really like to see is restorative justice, you know, where the focus is off of constant incarceration and the focus is on true healing and true, you know, reparations of communities and families. I think that's where we really start to begin to change the entire justice system.
So there's the dream, which is very similar to Elizabeth's, and then there's some practical things that I would like to see done and that I think can be done in a 6-year term. So the first is the dream that I've been thinking about this a lot. That I had a young woman, and we ultimately went to trial. But what I saw during the time of my trial years was that the prosecutor would file many different charges for one incident. Now, why is that? That's because they can ultimately get you on something. And their job is to get that person in jail or prison. This was an 18-year-old young woman. She had a boyfriend who ultimately became a pimp to her. And he put her out on the street on Western. And it was her first night. She was afraid. All of a sudden, he turned into this strange new person that was yelling at her and telling her that she had to, you know, do this. And she had given her girlfriend, they did it like a buddy system, which is so kind of pathetic, but that actually saved her in the charges that she had. She gave one girl her number, and she said, if I call you on some strange number, then you know that I'm with this guy. Like, that was their buddy system to help each other out. And she got in the car with the guy, and she got afraid. She pulled out a little pocket knife she had, and he got afraid And some people drove along and then they said, what are you doing? What are you doing to her? And because she started jerking away from him, he jumps out the car, she jumps in his car seat and drives off because she's afraid. So what do you think the prosecutor felt like about that? That meant carjacking, assault with a deadly weapon, robbery. I mean, it was like 5 different charges that was ridiculous because she was afraid of this guy who she decided, look, I don't want your money, I just want to get out of the car. And so what I would love is that they can only charge 1 charge. Pick what you want to do and charge 1 charge. I had to go to trial because they were just so determined to make this girl go to prison. And she was 18. She also had a little bit of, I won't say, she had anxiety issues, she had some issues, she had some trauma issues from before. But you know, it's just the kind of thing, and we won, but it's just the kind of thing that she was in jail for a long time. Her parents, who were, you know, modest means people, you know, had to, I guess, hawk their car or something to get her out. I mean, so there's all these things that are going on that affect the families, that affect, you know, the people and the neighbor, you know, just the families. It affects the whole family. It affects the person, of course. She's 18. She's been in jail now for like 7 or 8 months. She does get out. We do finally go to trial. We do finally win. But I mean, it was just that you could not get the prosecutors to come up off of these 5 different charges and pick one. And so that's my dream. But you know, they have so many different ways of just, and it's confusing to the jury. Because, you know, you have to talk to the jury and say, okay, she's not guilty of this because of this. She's not guilty of that because of this. She's not guilty of the 4th one because of this. She's not guilty of the 5th one because of this. And so, and they're confused. They think like, well, the prosecutor filed all this. There must be a reason why. You know, the reason why is just to put people in prison. So that's number 1. That's kind of the dream, is that it would be harder for them to file what they file. That would prevent them from going straight to jail and prison, or, you know, going straight to the solution is jail or prison. The other thing is, because I work with the homeless mobile unit, I know that we should have more homeless courts. We have a homeless court in Redondo Beach that developed in the last couple of years during the pandemic, one that's in Long Beach, and one that is in Torrance, is starting in Torrance. These homeless courts give wraparound service to those who are unhoused and at risk of being unhoused. And I know that they should have one downtown. I know that they should have one north, they should have one east. They should have them all over, because we have the unhoused everywhere, and they get just as impacted. And it's these small things, but they're in and out of court all the time. They pick up all these little misdemeanors, and they cannot get housed if that's the case. So that's the practical part that I think will happen. I intend to push it. I've been pushing it as a deputy public defender, and I'm going to continue to try to work with the prosecutors, the city attorneys, and you know, just in the area, in a certain area, in the courthouses, and the judicial council to do this. So I think I've rambled a little bit because you guys gave me like the microphone.
So the question is, what would we change, right? No, I just, what would we change?
Yeah, what would you change?
I mean, I'm gonna keep it simple. There's a lot of things I'd like to change, but I want to focus on what I can change, what's within my control, and I think it's the culture. And we were talking to someone at the Pomonin, I think it was like an online magazine today, about changing the culture. And you know, when you go into court and you're a defendant and you're in custody, everybody refers to you as the body, right? Court can be particularly dehumanizing, and I want to make it human again. I want to call people by their names instead of saying, "Where's the body?" I think that we can be effective, and we can run a court and not go all day and we can still run the calendar efficiently, but we can treat people like human beings. And we need judges who have more proximity and kinship with the folks that are in front of them than we currently see right now. I think we have a lot of judges that look down on the folks in front of them, and we can do better. So I want to be part of changing that culture. I want to encourage that amongst my colleagues when I get elected, because it's important.
And for Bobby Brown, a similar question. What change would you like to see and how would you make it happen on Inglewood City Council? And also, I think a lot of us are familiar with LA City Council, but don't know too much about the structure of Inglewood City Council. So if you could share a little bit about that.
So we have the mayor, we have 4 city council members. Little history on Inglewood and the city council. Our mayor was a 40-year, had a 40-year career with Santa Monica PD and with LAPD. Was a captain. The seat I'm going for, he was in the LAPD, Santa Monica PD, worked with the mayor as well. So they have very strong connection. And that intimidation factor, that fear factor that they use to climb throughout their career is something that they use in the political realm. And I'm seeing that even more so now during this campaign, trying to get signs up, trying to get banners up with these businesses that might not actually endorse the individual, but they've already come and they didn't ask. They kind of just put the signs up, put these banners up, and they are afraid to put them down. The main thing that I'd like to change, there's 3 main things that I think I can actually do that are, just fundamentally right. As of right now, a simple thing, our city council meetings are on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Most people are working, so they don't really get to have their voice heard, and they don't really get to be present. We average about, I think it's 10 to 25 eyes on Facebook Live, and then we typically have 4 or 5 people in the lecture hall. They still haven't opened up the actual room for us to be in the same room as our council members. The second thing is, and I've already started a petition about this, the maximum contributions that you can make to a political candidate in Inglewood is $100,000 per individual. So what that does is create a pipeline to outside interests. So, we have SoFi Stadium now, we have the Clippers Arena being built into a dome, we have the Forum. There has been donations made by individuals who own these establishments of $100,000. Their friends have made $100,000. Their spouses have made $100,000. And, all of a sudden, you have somebody running for my opponent from January to June raise $270,000. That is for what? We have 28,000 people in our district. That is ridiculous. So getting that out there, getting the transparency out there. Another thing is we have no term limits. So we have, it's 4 years at a time, and you can run as much as you like. So once you have the mayor on your side, you have the council on your side, and you have this nepotism, that's truly what it is. Just a little backstory, the mayor, he was already the mayor, and my opponent was the outside coming in facing the incumbent at the time, and the mayor did not endorse the incumbent, rather endorsed his friend, walked right in. And since then he has gone unopposed. Last election went unopposed, only got 900 votes. It's crazy. It's crazy. 900 votes out of a 28,000 population. So there's things I can do to, obviously, there are other candidates. District 1 is also up for election. The mayor is up for election. So there are, collaborations that need to be made. I can't obviously go in there and I can disrupt some things. I can bring some truth to things, I can add some transparency, but not much is gonna get done when the majority is still being puppeteered. Another thing, so our 4th seat, District 4, they've appointed, right? So when somebody resigns or somebody steps down, you get to appoint somebody. There's no election, there's no special election for city council seats, only for the mayor. So District 1, there's a gentleman who's running again. He's not there mentally. He's been doing it for a really long time. It's just his time to transition out. It's nothing against him. It's just that time. And you know, big picture, big plan, and it's been discussed and it's been vocalized is for him to run, to win, for him to step down, then they get to appoint into District 1. And if something happens where, so the guy I'm going up against, to raise that kind of money tells me you want to be mayor. Our mayor has a lot of legal cases going against him right now. There's a lot of misogyny, toxic masculinity, all of the good old fundamentals that have corrupted politics forever. It is very profound in Inglewood. And we are at a very pivotal time where we have the 3 of the largest entertainment establishments in the world in our 9-square-mile city, 3 of which is a cemetery, 110,000 people, and they are just getting their issues swept under the rug. There's no true concern. Our schools have been in receivership to the state for the past decade. We don't run our own school district. We don't run the budget of our own school district. The administrators we had working with the county who were overseeing our schools, our number 1 and number 2 both are stepping down at the end of October, so now we have to reestablish new relationships with our administrators. It's just it's showing and it's giving corruption at the highest level. They're not even hiding it at this point. They are just dancing around with it. And they have no concern for accountability because, like I said, they've been going unopposed. So my hope is to come in, shake things up, give people a reason to care again, give them a true advocate that will amplify their voice, and not kind of dictate what needs to be done, and encourage folks to stand up for what it is that they want. The physical, the emotional, and the mental wellness of our residents has not been prioritized. I run a father support group, and I've been doing that for about 4 years now. I have 4 young children, so the school systems are very dire to me, as well as the mental wellness of our parents in Inglewood. It's a very, you know, I don't know how many parents we have in the audience, but being a parent is a very unforgiving, you know, endeavor that we all take on. There is not much concern for our mental well-being, let alone the kids, especially when they don't have safe schools to go to, schools that actually have the resources that they need, and we are busy working on the day-to-day. It's just reprioritizing the things that matter to the residents and amplifying their voice in a real way, and kind of taking that power back and making it so they have to adjust to what it is that we need, as opposed to us having to just eat what it is that they give us.
Thank you. We're going to go to live audience questions in a second, but I wanted to ask one more question to each of you, and my challenge for y'all is to keep it under 1.5 minutes. I will cut you off brutally if it's longer than 1.5 minutes. But you are all running for positions that are part of this larger county ecosystem, but each of your positions do unique things and play a unique role. And so asking very specific questions to each of you, I'll start with you this time, Bobby. Inglewood's oiled fields, as well as other environmental pollution, have negatively impacted the health of community members, many including school children. What will you do to prevent further harm to community members, as well as caring for members who have already suffered from these negative environmental impacts?
So that goes into the wellness. I think that starts with accountability. Our city council currently likes to point the finger at the county for everything. So it's kind of taking back that accountability and realizing those oil wells that are visible, very visible, need to be divested from and need to be, kind of left alone. They need to be stopped. We have very minimal bike lanes right now. We don't allow electric scooters to be ran through, and we are attracting more traffic day by day with all of the games and the events that we are having. So I think it's very important for us to prioritize those things. You talk to the city. I don't think there's been a new clean energy policy passed since 2013 in Inglewood, and that is very intentional. If we did do these things, then we wouldn't be attracting these billionaires to come in and create these spaces that will attract more and more people to come. We just opened the MetroLink, which I think will help, but I think at the same time we need to have more bike lanes. We need to have things that show the big oil companies that we don't need them there. And I think it's collaborating with our neighbors, whether it be LA, other South Bay cities, and to really prioritize it and actually have plans that show alignment. I think that's the end all be all. We need to have alignment with each other.
Thank you. And this same question will go for all of the judges. And again, a minute and a half. All of you in previous interviews and even today have talked about the judicial system disproportionately affecting Black, Brown, and LGBTQ+ community members and youth. What can you and will you do as a Superior Court judge to address systemic discrimination, both in your own courtroom and in the larger LA court system?
Well, that's a really good question. Judges are limited, right? They're limited to work within the law. But there's been so many laws passed, like the Racial Justice Act, which I know I've litigated with Liz. We worked together on one, where you take it into account and you can right wrongs. So you can right past wrongs where the police have been, doing sting operations they probably shouldn't have, that were targeting certain races of people. And now that the Racial Justice Act is retroactive, we can address it that way. But it's a matter of judges understanding the historical exclusion of certain people from our concept of justice for all. And I think that fixing any problem, the first step to fixing it is recognizing that there's a problem. And most judges are not even discussing this. Or judicial candidates are not even acknowledging that there is a historical exclusion of lots of folks in the system. So there are tools available. This is as short as I can make it. It's a very dense question, and it's hard to summarize in a minute. But I'm looking forward to addressing it on the bench.
So I am an African-American female, and there are 4% on the bench who are African-American females. There are, I think it's 7% total African-American, Black people on the bench. It is just about 7% total Latino. It is just about 8% API. So, what you are not getting is a diverse bench. And I, as a public defender, have I think it's a good 37% are African-American people are my clients. More than 44 or 45% are Latino. And, the rest are mixed. But you don't have diversity on the bench. And so what I always say is, Los Angeles County deserves to have diversity because Los Angeles County is diverse. And background informs behavior. If you don't walk within the realm of the people who come in front of the bench, and you don't really know that, at least you can know that if you're not, let's say, if you're a white guy, you can know that. You can know that you're not the same as these people in front of you, and that they are not going to have the same background and issues. So again, background informs behavior, and Los Angeles County deserves diversity. And just me taking the bench, I'm going to do it differently.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief, and a lot of good things have already been said, but the things that I was thinking about when you brought that up of what could I actually do as a judge, Anna made a great point. First of all, it's recognizing the issues when they come before you, right? So if you don't have any knowledge of this, if you don't have the background, if you don't have the training, the life experience, you're not even going to recognize that there's systemic and structural problems, right? Or there's disparate treatment of certain groups, right? So the first is being very cognizant and aware of what's going on. The second is calling it out, or calling out the issues when they present themselves in the courtroom, and not just accepting business as usual. So I've been within the system for 2 decades, and I've watched so much of business as usual, you know, and things just happen that you know are wrong, and everyone just kind of goes, well, that's how it is. So for example, there are drug programs within the jail system that I've tried to get clients into, and they get rejected because they're like, oh, your client's gay, and that they can't go into that dorm where the drug program is. So I'm like, so no one who's LGBTQ can enter this drug program? And everyone's like, sorry. And it's like, if I were a judge, I would be able to, I think, get involved in that. And I would be able to call the people at the jail and say, this is a problem, we need to fix this. It's an equal protection problem. You can't have certain programs that exclude certain people. So, I mean, there are literal things that, but I think most judges are afraid, or they're just, again, business as usual, and I wouldn't accept business as usual. I would push the envelope, push the change. And also, I think I would force more training of judges. I don't think there's an understanding of implicit bias, structural racism, history of legal system, and how racist it is. I would force those trainings as much as I could upon my future colleagues.
Thank you to all 3 of you. And the final question. So for the LA County Board of Supervisors, there are 5 people who sit on this board, but they make decisions on a nearly $40 billion budget. This budget affects access to resources for everyone and for youth all throughout the county. What is the biggest change you want to see in the county's current budget allocations? And how would you make these changes happen to ensure youth views are taken into account when deciding on the budget?
That's a really good question. I'll start with the youth aspect. I know that bringing young people in is a very important and central aspect of what Lindsay wants to do. Throughout this campaign and throughout her time in West Hollywood, and also as the president of California Contract Cities Association, which is a large group of all of the small cities throughout Los Angeles County that contract for services with the county, she's worked to, bring all of these different, very broad coalitions together to get really momentous things accomplished. And that includes young people. That includes a lot of young people in West Hollywood. West Hollywood, it's like 50% under 40, under 35. I can't remember the specific number, but it's a very young city. So, bringing young people onto commissions, onto advisory boards, like she's done in West Hollywood, is a really central part of that. And on the funding question, I think the biggest piece for her is really investing in the county's sustainability plan. It's there, it's award-winning for all of these amazing features that it has, whether it's transitioning to renewable energy, or shutting down every single oil well in LA County, or shutting down Aliso Canyon, or cleaning up fully the Santa Susana site in the hills. That is a huge priority, and making sure that young people are brought into that conversation and are participating when it comes to these issues of climate, these issues of transportation, and how they all tie together, also with housing, is a priority.
Thank you so much. Yeah, big round of applause for all of you, and we're way over time because I selfishly wanted to listen to you all forever. forever, but I wanted to make sure we got one audience question from Nico before we move on to the state. Not from Nico, from a new person.
Hi, I'm Robert from Sunrise LA. I worked on the Climate Pledge in partnership with Youth Climate Strike LA, and I just wanted to ask you all again today if you guys are willing to commit to the pledge that ensures 100% renewable energy by 2030, clean air and water for all, and housing for all.
Absolutely.
So, I feel awful. As a judge, I'm limited, I don't do policy, right? So I can't make any campaign promises, but I can say I will follow the law. So you guys enact laws, you make sure that this is the law, and I will follow the law.
Yes, and I think we were endorsed by Sunrise. I could be wrong. But we cannot, as candidates, say that we will take a pledge. But again, yes, I want clean energy, and I personally want that. I personally want, I would personally take that pledge, but I can't do it as a candidate, yes.
Yeah, I echo, and just to explain, any other candidate can take a pledge. The judicial candidates, we have to take this ethics class, and it explains to us that our candidacy is different from any other political candidate, and we are sort of stuck in this middle ground of weird, like we can't endorse another candidate, it's very strange. So personally, me as a human being, I would do it in a hot second, but as a candidate, I have to shy away from that. But I think you all know where we stand. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also want to add, Lindsay, when she is still on the West Hollywood City Council, there was a climate action plan that was passed in 2007, which projected for the city to become renewable and clean by 2045. When she joined the council, she said, this is not happening. So they did a climate adaptation plan where they edited the plan, and that plan now is getting the city on that track by 2030 to align with these goals.
Thank you all for coming out tonight and spending your Friday night with us. Thank you all for watching and listening. And next we're going to bring on Keon to talk to the state and federal candidates. And a big round of applause for these great speakers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, and if the people who sign the pledge could go over there, or agreed to sign the pledge could go over there to physically sign it.
Yeah, I don't know why it's happening. It is really
Yo, Kyle, is it working?
Huh?
Is it working?
It's on. No, you're fine, We're on break right now.
Oh, you guys.
Alright, we're good. We like? Yeah, we should be. I don't know why we're filming it.
Every
We're
state,
probably-
federal.
Can you check and see if we're live?
We're live.
Alright. We're still live, yeah.
Oh yeah, this is the most important one. Every state and federal candidate. Wait, so is the mic?
No. Wait.
Oh, turn that off.
Hello?
Oh.
All right. Oh, hey everyone. My name is Keon. I'm a organizer with Youth Climate Strike. I'm a freshman undergrad. I'm a Los Angeles native my entire life, and Here I'm going to be introducing some amazing candidates on the state and federal level that we're going to have an in-depth policy conversation on the interests of youth and people across California and the United States as a whole. So I'd love to, sorry, I'd love to have each candidate just stand up really quickly, introduce themselves. We are in a time crunch, so please, be concise. Thank you.
Thank you, Kian, yeah? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Fatima Iqbal Zubair. Running for California State Assembly District 65. Thank you, first of all, for organizing this. As you know, my professional background is I'm a teacher. I'm a mom to a son going to public school, an immigrant organizer. So I especially really value the youth. I still work with my students really closely in the robotics program I founded. I was just with them today. So don't tell anyone else I said this, but I think y'all are one of the most important electorate to me, and I'm sure to everyone here. So, round of applause to yourself. Your voice is important, it matters. So, I'm really running for me, probably as many of us didn't think I would ever run for office, but the circumstances, kind of called for it. I worked in a school that to this day has contaminated water, lead toxicity, arsenic toxicity, in a community that has the lowest life expectancy because of the health determinants. Started organizing locally as a teacher, and I was actually appointed commissioner by my current opponent. Did not know he was, an incumbent Democrat that was voting against almost every key climate policy. And pretty much in a nutshell, to keep it short, as soon as I found that out, I decided to run. And we mounted a really strong campaign in 2020, got the endorsement of Senator Sanders, which was really awesome. And yeah, we're here running again, a much stronger campaign, and so we're hoping that we're going to take our policies that we believe into Sacramento. Thank you. My last thing I'll say is my district is Assembly District 65. There's 80 assembly districts. So Assembly District 65 is North Watts, south to some of San Pedro, east to Carson, and west to West Carson. It is one of the most impacted districts in the entire state. Has over a quarter of the state's refineries. It has 80% of the drilling in LA County. Only about over 52% have even high school degrees, so it's a very blue-collar district. We're surrounded by freeways, so when you think about things, with climate justice, it's one of the most impacted communities. It should have someone that's leading on this issue, leading on a just transition, but it has, in fact, the opposite sort of leader representing the district. So we're really running to respond to the needs of the district. I'm sure the questions will talk about other issues as well, so I'll keep it at that.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Mia Levis Porter, and I'm running for the California Assembly for District 52. I was really excited for this forum because I am running because of my kids. I want a world that is going to work for them. I want a planet that is habitable for them and for my grandchildren. I really want to thank Sim, Shekinah for organizing, for our amazing moderators tonight. Thank you. So, as I mentioned, I'm a mom of 2 boys. I'm the daughter of immigrants. I'm a community organizer. I'm a gun violence survivor, and I'm an elected delegate for my district. And I fell into this, as Fatima said, was never what I expected for my life. But I fell into advocacy first when I saw my eldest go to school and there were programs, music, PE, that the parents had to fundraise $20,000, $15,000 for. That's a lot of money in my neighborhood. And so I worked and volunteered full-time hours to make sure that these programs, that my kids and their friends could have these programs, that the kids on the west side can, or the other more affluent neighborhoods. And then I stood with our teachers during the teacher strike because I know and I value education. I believe it is the foundation of our society, which is why public education is so important to me. And then after Parkland, again, inspired by our youth, I felt that we had failed our kids. We had failed to keep them safe. I joined Moms Demand Action, and a week in, I found out that I was a survivor of gun violence. My brother had died by gun suicide after battling schizophrenia for 5 years. And coming from a Filipino family, the stigma, we didn't talk about it for 25 years. And it was only until I learned to use my voice through Moms Demand, sharing my story, that I could see how it would move legislators to act, how it would inspire others who maybe weren't survivors to take action, That's when I realized how important it is to use all of our voices. And that's why I'm running. I want a California that is going to work for all of us. I'm running because the incumbent in my race is corrupt AF. She, sexual harassment in her office, employing somebody federally indicted, admitted to being federally indicted for racketeering on our taxpayer dime for 2 years, going off on a lobby trip to Hawaii at the height of COVID. I know we deserve better. She has been inaccessible, doesn't care about our voices, and that's why I'm running, because I want to be the voice for our district. I want to hear, and we have been doing the work of reaching out to our community to make them feel heard. We want people to believe in our government again, that it will work for them. And that's been the biggest heartbreak for me, is running into people who are like, I don't believe in anyone anymore. Everyone I've supported has let me down. But I'm here to change their minds and to have them have faith again. And so I want a California that works for all. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Caroline Menjivar, pronouns she, her, ella, and I'm running for the State Senate District 20. I know a lot of people said the San Fernando Valley. I'm running in the Valley, looking to represent my backyard, also the city of Burbank. This is a brand new district. This is an open seat that I'm so happy and proud to be looking to represent, a seat that has the community members that look like me. And this firm is very important to me because I started my activism when I was almost 19 years old. And it was during Prop 8. I don't know if y'all remember, but Prop 8 here in the state of California was taking away my right to marry my now wife. So at almost 19 years old, I went to Hollywood and I protested for the first time. I had no idea what it meant to be an activist, to use my voice, but it was that moment that opened my eyes to people in office have the ability to change my life. People in office have the ability to take away my happiness. And at that moment, I didn't know I was gonna run for office, but I wanted to do something about it. So I traveled in this, what I call very unique life and adventure, where I started as an EMT working on the front lines of healthcare, where I transported patients. A lot of people have mentioned mental health. I was the one who would have to accompany a lot of sheriffs who would handcuff patients to our gurneys. Then we would take them to ERs only for them to be back on the street 3 days later. I started realizing that there weren't systems in place to really help individuals who were struggling with addiction, who were struggling with mental illness, and were screaming out to the society for help, but we were giving them a bus token and told, good luck on the street. I've worked as a domestic violence therapist out in this community, where I've worked with individuals where language was a barrier, and I was the translator, where I've worked with individuals where I responded to 911 calls as a victim advocate, and people wanted to talk to me versus the uniformed officer because I had the training, not that officer. I want to see my social work peers at the front lines of these types of calls. I now am a nonprofit director in this very district, where I help people fill out COVID rental assistance applications, utility assistance, connect them to food, because this district has one of the highest food insecurities. This district held the top 5 place in the city of LA during COVID for COVID deaths and cases. This is a district that needs representation and equitable representation. I'm running to replace a senator who in the Senate has killed almost every single environmental bill, who in the Senate has killed social housing bills, bills that's really gonna solve so many of our crises. But I'm running against his son. He thinks that he can hand it over to his son as if we were in England, as if this was a gift for someone's birthday. I have put 15 years of my life into working in this community, and I'm fighting tooth and nail to ensure that my community gets the representation it needs. So as a fighter, as someone who's worked in this area, as someone who has the lived experiences, who when someone comes up to me and says, hey, my rent is too high, hey, I think I'm gonna be evicted, I don't imagine what that feels like. I know what that feels like because I've experienced eviction. Because for a year, I had a couch surf at the age of 18 years old. Thankfully, I had friends that had couches to give me, but my mom is still on a waiting list for affordable housing. Stories that are so often heard in our district. So if you're in the Valley, if you know someone and you want to make sure that nepotism doesn't play a role in who we have up in Sacramento, tell them Caroline Menjivar, the fighter, is running to represent us, because even if you don't live there, all state seats will impact everyone in the state of California. So thank you so much.
Hey everybody, how we doing tonight? All right. I want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight. I want to thank the organizers for putting this on. All of these fabulous candidates up here. I support every single person up here, as well as everybody that has been on the stage before this. Folks, my name is Maybe a Girl, and I am a candidate for U.S. Congress. I'm running right next door, literally right on the other side of the 101 in California District 30, which includes West Hollywood, Silver Lake, Echo Park, the Hollywood Hills, Burbank, Glendale. It goes all the way north to Sunland, Tujunga, and all the way south to Olympic, past Park La Brea, the Grove area, LACMA. And this is actually my second time running. I ran in 2020. I ended up losing the primary election that year by less than 1%. So we said, yo, we have to do this again. So I decided to run again in 2022. And we ended up winning the primary election, honestly, against all odds. I was actually running in the most crowded congressional election in the entire state of California. We had 9 people running in my particular race. So we ended up beating out 7 other people. We beat out 4 Republicans, conservative Republicans at that. We beat out a conservative independent, an eco-fascist, and a moderate Democrat. And it was amazing because we made this election historic. This is the first time that California District 30 has had 2 Democrats on the ballot for the general election. So we ensured that there is not going to be any Republicans coming in. The reason that I am running, however, I get asked this question a lot because I'm running against somebody he's been in office for over 20 years. I'm running against Adam Schiff. And he is he is a darling of the Democratic Party, specifically the establishment part of the Democratic Party. And, I just don't trust a congressperson who has stocks in pharmaceuticals to want to fight for universal health care. I don't trust that an incumbent who every single year votes for almost $1 trillion for the annual defense budget, when the military is one of the largest industrial polluters on the earth, to actually give a damn about enacting the Green New Deal. And a huge reason I'm running against him is because he is essentially a war hawk. He has voted for every single war issue. Since the early 2000s, he voted for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He voted for the Saudi invasion of Yemen. Collectively, those have resulted in about 2 million deaths worldwide. And so while Schiff can apologize for those votes, those people don't get to live out the rest of their lives. And we need somebody who's going to vote against war efforts. By the way, you take a look at who is donating to his campaign, and it is weapons manufacturers and defense contractors. So is it any shock that he is supporting war efforts? So, those are big reasons that I'm running against him. I'm just not satisfied with the representation. I'm running on a platform that I describe as intersectional humanitarianism. It includes universal health care, housing for all, education for all, environmental justice, racial justice, LGBTQIA rights, reproductive rights, alleviating homelessness, gun control, and staying out of war. All of these are amazing, worthwhile issues to fight for, and we need to see them all happening simultaneously, because we can't have racial justice or queer justice without healthcare justice or environmental justice. Another big reason, I apologize, I didn't mention my pronouns. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. I'm a trans non-binary person. I'm the first trans non-binary person to ever advance to a general election for the U.S. House of Representatives. I didn't do this to be the first. I did this to make sure that we are opening up pathways so that a diverse community of people can be our representatives. I have a good friend who always says, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. And if we don't have any trans representatives in our government, how can I trust that our government is looking out for trans people? Hello. So I hope you will come out and vote for us on November 8th, and looking forward to the rest of the forum. Thank y'all. And give it up for David Kim.
Wow, she's so great. Thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is David Kim. Thank you. So I am also a second-time candidate. I ran in 2020. There were 5 candidates that ran in the primary election. We won second place out of the 5 candidates and advanced. And so we did really well. We won 22% in the 2020 primary. Fast forwarding in the 2020 general, we won 47% as a first-time candidate. And that's really good. And given that in the previous year, the Progressive Challenger, even as a Green Party candidate, did super well, because in our district, there's less than 1% registered as Green. Kenneth Mejia running for city controller. So I was one of his super volunteers back then and coordinated his videos and whatnot, and he did really well. He won, despite there only being 1% registered as Green, he won almost 30% of all voters. That means a third of Democratic voters didn't vote for their Democratic congressman, they voted for the Green Party challenger. And so I was like, Kenneth, you need to run again, you need to run again. Like, we put so much time into this, and like, he's like, no, I'm tired. And I was like, what? Okay, fine, then can I run? Like, if nobody else, like, go ask people. If they say no, like, there's nobody else running, then I'll run. And so then this is how this happened. But we did really well because during that year, from Kenneth's 45,000 votes, we brought that up to 97,000 votes. We brought in 50,000 new voters. Jimmy Gomez's votes in 2018, it was 110,000 votes, and it went down to 108,000 votes. And so we are closing the gap. This past June primary, he got 50% of the vote as opposed to 53%. And the reason why we're running again no, it's okay. The reason why we're running again is because in running, as everyone here knows, we can run all we want, but when we get second place, we didn't win. But yes, we're pushing left. We're pushing people to wake up, to start talking with us, and there's so many benefits of that to run. But then also, we're running not because we're just making a statement, we're also running because we want to win. We want to be in those positions of power. We want to be at the table. We want to say, hey, no, you can't do that anymore. And so I was hearing some of the judge candidates talk, and yes, business is as usual in the courts. And so for us, when we lost last November, our team, none of us said, oh yeah, let's run again. None of us said that. We said, hey, we did really great. We pushed all that we can, but a loss is a loss. And the people have spoken. They did vote 47% to 53%. No matter whether or not we got the closest race since 1976 in our district, regardless of that, we still lost. And so it was going back to helping people, doing what we know best as lawyers. So I went to being a juvenile dependency attorney, working in children's court, working for the most vulnerable parents of Los Angeles County, day in and day out in children's court, crying with them every day, wondering why they couldn't sign up for services that they need, and they only had 6-month, 12-month, 18-month waiting periods, and if they don't get those services, their children are taken away from them and their parental relationship is terminated. Why is that? Because we have racial laws like ASFA, the Adoption Safe Families Act, that is based on racism. And these are the things that we need to be talking about in every county of the country that's happening right now. We're not providing services, we're not providing the programs that our parents need. And that's just one of the things that we need to do. As an immigration litigation attorney, there are so many things that politicians, that judges could be doing. When I'm in court defending the individuals and families that their only wish is to be here and to be human, there are certain things that you could be easily doing if you even cared about immigration. I know a lot of progressive politicians say, oh, pathway to citizenship, but bullshit. You don't even know what that means or looks like. Why don't you talk about the immediate things that you could be doing right now? For example, when President Trump was in office, prosecutorial discretion, which is something that was widely used when Obama was in office, and I'm not giving him a key out, but that's a whole other topic. But in regards to Trump, there was prosecutorial discretion where trial judges, DHS, had the ability to administratively close or put a case out of court if the person had no crime history, had a great reputation, had a job, was paying for their family, had a great record, closed, you're out of court, you don't have to have the stress of being removed from the country. But why does that have to change with each administration? Because it's a political thing. Why do millions of families of lives have to be in stake like that? Thankfully, with President Biden in the administration, PD, prosecutorial discretion, came back, and trial judges have that ability to close those cases. But what if the next administration comes in? So why are Congress members sitting on their ass and they're not codifying these things like Roe v. Wade, like prosecutorial discretion? Why are they fucking always on the defense and saying, hey, I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, vote for me because I haven't done anything about codifying Roe v. Wade for years? What the hell is that? There's so much shit going on that they're trying to sell to us that they're doing so great, but no, they're not doing anything for us. And so that's why all of these candidates here are running, because they truly care. They know that people are suffering. In the past decade, rent and the cost of living have gone up 30 to 60%, but living wages have not. We need to talk about that. Gina Viola, mayoral candidate, earlier, she said that the cost to live here in LA is $39 an hour. Why aren't we talking about that? And so these are the things that we need to talk about. And the reason why we can't talk about it is because they tell us, we have no money, we have no money. Fuck, no, you have the money, you're just not giving it to us. When you go to subsidytracker.com, you can see which corporations and special interests they dole out money to. We need the bottom line, I'm not going to go on that rabbit hole, but bottom line, we need to free up money for the people right now. That's the first and foremost. Number two, we need to go into Congress laser focused. I know Maybe just shared their plan of being with this intersectionality platform and agenda. Ours is similar in the sense of giving everyone a floor to stand on because so many people are falling and nobody cares. Not one soul is less than another. We need to be laser focused, whether it be in immigration, what I know best, whether it be in juvenile dependency, what I know best, whether it be in all of the different areas that people have had life experiences in. And what was that? Yes, and then number three, co-governance is, yes, so we just want everyone's voices to be heard. And so that's the thing, and yeah, let's have that be a segue into the questions. Go ahead, Young.
I want to thank I want to thank every candidate for their passion, and so I will ask from this point forward if everybody could keep their responses concise. Maybe a minute and a half. But thank you guys so much for moving opening statements. Let's start the forum now. So I want to start by asking about one of the most pertinent issues within California, especially, and the United States as a whole. Inflation. And I want to specifically ask about the intersections between the dialogue we've been having about climate policy and how we can do that in the current material and economic conditions that we're facing today. So particularly for the most marginalized, impoverished groups where they're facing the brunt of inflation and increased energy costs the most, how can we, on one hand, manage that through our policy and aid those communities while at the same time trying to commit to the long overdue movement from fossil fuel dependency to renewable resources and really start the shift towards a sustainable environmental future. So how can we essentially thread the needle to support our environment and make those necessary economic shifts while at the same time not leaving the most impoverished communities out on their own? And so this applies to both California and the United States, so I'd love to start. Yeah.
No. Okay. We'll add on. I just. No, he did. He gave it to me.
Okay, all right, try to keep this to 2 minutes. First of all, capitalism, right? A lot of us who do in capitalism do agree, right? Yeah. Okay, so I am a democratic socialist for that reason. I believe in redistribution. I believe in decommodifying a lot of things that aren't rights right now, like housing, like clean air, like good schools, right? So to be concise, right? At the state level, we have the largest income inequality gap. So we know inflation is affecting the vast majority of the state and not like the top 1% or the 1% of all the corporations, right? So I believe that what we need to do is make sure that the corporations, the billionaires in the state pay their fair share, number one, right? We saw in the pandemic that oil companies, corporations made record profits in a pandemic here when we saw people fall out of jobs, have high gas prices, fall out of housing. That tells you our system is not working. That's why I fundamentally don't believe in capitalism. That's what we need to do is make sure we tax these companies, make sure they're paying their fair share, right? We have to also, increase the living wage, right? Yes, to $39 an hour, right? Okay, because all of this is connected, right? Inflation and how it's affecting working families is connected to how you can afford to just afford basic things and live, right? And essentially live. So we have we have a society right now in California where folks are trying to survive and get by, but not able to thrive, right? Something where Alex Liuslatos are gonna meet. We're just in Austria, right, and Vienna, and talking about how the work week is different there, right? How housing is decommodified and the government provides it. These are not radical ideas. They can be done, especially in a state that has the most money in the nation.
So I particularly love this question, especially for my race. So my incumbent takes $30,000 at least from fossil fuel money. By the way, I don't know if I said that I'm running a clean money campaign, so I'm not taking it. The no fossil fuel pledge was the first one I signed. So, like I said, I've seen her get funded by special interests and vote for them. AB 1139 last year was a bill that she wrote essentially to tax rooftop solar, and by that way would kill the industry. Hell yeah. So we were able to kill it, because again, power of the people. I love it. So she tried to reintroduce it this year under 2143, under the guise of a living wage. And basically, essentially, it's like, oh, I'm supporting these solar workers. I want them to have the same rights as larger companies. However, solar workers and the majority of these businesses, sorry, this might not take 2 minutes, it might be longer. A majority of these businesses are small businesses, BIPOC owned, women owned, where their employees make $25 to $50 an hour. This bill would kill 60,000 jobs, green jobs. So unfortunately, Governor Newsom signed it into law, which sucks. So for me, it's really important that as a party, especially Democrats, especially progressive Democrats, we need to be not taking fossil fuel money, period. I'm sick and tired of politicians who are bought and paid for by special interests. And in addition, we need to be embracing, I live in a small 2-bedroom home in Elysian Valley. Our electric bill is $1,200 a month. What the hell? Wow. So my sister, when we got a stimulus check from COVID in North Dakota, when she got that check, that was her mortgage for the month. How nice. Here, like I said, it barely covers our electric bill. So for me, I also believe in, in addition to raising the minimum wage to a living wage, I believe in a universal basic income, because this is where the fact that we have to have 3 minimum wage jobs to survive, to afford a 1-bedroom, $2,000 a month apartment or home is ridiculous. And this is where our government in California needs to help compensate so that we can live, we can thrive, we can flourish and actually reinvest. It's us, it's the lower class and the middle classes that reinvest into society, not the 1%ers. Please, they try to get tax cuts and they're cheap as hell. So, UBI, I'm gonna wrap it up. Okay, so anyhow, that's where I stand.
You know, I'm proud to say that I'm the candidate that's endorsed by environmental groups, because I mentioned in my intro that I actually help people fill out utility assistance, to get help with utility assistance. So I've heard plenty of stories in my community who need help. I want to make sure I go up to Sacramento and make it easier. When we talk about solar, so often people think about single-family dwellings. But where do we really need to support individuals? It's our multi-family dwellings who need the support in shaving off as much off their bill as possible. So what I want to do is provide incentives to property owners, to managers, to put solar in multi-family dwellings, so then the rebates, the savings go down to each tenant. When we talk about electric vehicle, and we know the mandate we have in the state of California, where is the infrastructure there? Because programs like Blue LA do not exist in the San Fernando Valley. They exist in affluent areas. While the public housing in Pacoima has an electric sharing program, there are no ports for people to charge electric vehicles, and that saves so much money. So I want to make sure we have infrastructure support to create these charging ports. I want to make sure that we're providing heat pumps for individuals, because with heat pumps, that decreases a huge percentage of energy usage, and that shaves a lot of savings for individuals on the utility side. So, and finally, I want to make sure that we remove what the subsidies exist right now for the fossil fuel industry. Those are subsidies that shouldn't be going to them. That's money that we can utilize to give monthly rebates to make sure people have money in their pockets. So those are the things that I'm thinking about up in Sacramento.
So it's been a few people. Would you mind repeating the question? Just, I feel like we've been almost playing a little bit of telephone. I just want to make sure I'm answering the correct question.
Yeah, sorry. So really quickly, I was asking how, given the current economic circumstances, inflation, especially when it comes to energy prices, how can we address the needs of switching to out of fossil fuels and the climate needs that have been long overdue, while at the same time keeping those communities in mind that could be harmed as a result of a sudden switch in energy that would drive up the prices dramatically and leave them out, and pretty much it would be wealthy, like a green space for only wealthy individuals, and the people in most marginalized communities would be left suffering.
Absolutely. Thank you for repeating that. So I think, a way that we can achieve those kinds of justice elements is, first of all, it has to be not just a federal thing, not just a state thing, not just a county thing or a municipal thing. It really needs to be a coalition of elected officials who have these same similar ideals and values, folks who are not taking any sort of corporate donations, folks who are not taking money from oil and gas, folks who are not taking money from the military-industrial complex. When corporations form PACs to support candidates, they are not charities. They are expecting something in return. So you should absolutely not trust your representative if they are taking money from these big industries. And it's not just the oil and gas industry. It is the military-industrial complex. And there's very few establishment Democrats that do not support the military-industrial complex or receive donations from them. One of the things that I saw flooding my Twitter feed today was the Van Gogh painting and the tomato soup being thrown across it. And I saw all of this outrage about this painting. I'm an artist. I believe that we need artwork. I don't think we should ever place property or things like that over people in the future of our planet and our existence. And, it made me wonder, where was the outrage when just a couple of months ago, the president and Congress, they passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is being hailed as the most aggressive climate action bill in modern history. And at the same time, it included millions of acres of onshore and offshore oil and gas leases. This is not the way that we achieve environmental stability or environmental justice in the future. So we really need to elect officials that are focusing on the people and not on corporate interests. I know some of you also spoke about UBI. UBI is a great way. Public transportation, really simple way that cities can really make an impact on climate change. And I think about cities like Los Angeles. So I'm originally from Chicago. One of the reasons I love Chicago, it was so easy to get around town without a car. You could just easily jump on a train, on a bus. Here, you've got to set aside an extra hour to hour and a half to plan for your travels. So we need greater infrastructure in public transportation. It's got to be free. We need to have less police involved. And it needs to be a coalition between municipal efforts, county efforts, state efforts, and federal efforts. I would love to see high-speed rail from here to New York City.
I will start my 2-minute timer. Give it some time anyway. It's been tough. Ever since 2001 with the recession, we haven't recovered truly. We've made little strides here and there, and then another hits, and then we made little strides here and there, and so we've been put back a lot. So that's put our supply chains very weak, very not strong at all, and so the pandemic showed that they're not robust at all. So we need to be focusing on that, first of all. Number two, in regards to building out a more efficient and cheaper infrastructure that's also very energy efficient, that will save so much in the long term. But there's all these kind of short-term, immediate maximization of profit mentality that our Congress members are going through, which really comes from this, I don't know what it would be, this imposter mentality, I don't know, for lack of a better word. When they could be asking and reaching for more. There's more that we could do, cutting the high cost of education, of insurance, of school, canceling student debt for young people, for small businesses where most of our American workforce is made up of small businesses. Why aren't we providing direct support? This district received the lowest number of PPP loans. There's so many things we could do, but not one of the things, but the main thing that all of these candidates have mentioned is what we're seeing right now is this corporate welfare system that is happening both on the state, local, and national level, and we need to end it. Because this idea of giving out and free money, subsidies, and tax breaks to these big corporate players will trickle down to the people working in those industries, but that's false. It hasn't worked, and it will never continue to work, because in a pandemic like this, while inflation and prices are going high, we've seen record corporate high profits, while people continue to suffer on mass levels. What is up with that? So it's not working at all, and so if the trickle-down economy, I have 7 seconds, is not working, we need to create a trickle-up economy with UBI, be laser-focused, not budge on fossil fuel stuff in IRA, and then also create a Green New Deal for families and communities.
Thank you. That's the energy we need. So actually, to expedite time, we'll keep it up there and we'll move back and forth. Next, I want to discuss an idea that's often espoused, within like American discourse, the idea of social mobility and economic mobility, and the idea that, your generation will be higher than your parents' station, and that it's a constant growth of wealth. But we've seen, particularly with the millennial generation, and now with, some of the older members of Gen Z, that is just simply not true anymore. And particularly when it comes to things like the cost to own a home, or even the cost to rent a home, that is evidently apparent. So I want to ask each of you, and to try to be brief, what do you believe is one prescription or diagnosis for why this rental inflation crisis has risen so dramatically, and then also provide one form of policy approach that you would take to have a long-term permanent solution to it, to remediate that issue. Thank you.
Is this 1 minute or 2 minutes?
1 minute, 3 seconds.
1 minute, 3 seconds. Okay, got it. So I guess I'll just continue from what I was talking about then. But no, really, in regards to kind of providing the youth with the tools that they need, with regards to why are we always just talking about these key talking points, performative politics? Why aren't we talking about providing trade school, classes that will actually help, financial literacy classes, be able to provide a just transition for jobs, being able to provide 20 million new jobs for people across the country, and helping our communities in this way, and linking them up where there's apprenticeship programs in every high school, where we have support services and skill services for young people to be able to do that. And imagine this, let's say, and this is a picture, oh my gosh, I have 10 seconds. So imagine this, you get a UBI of $1,000 a month, you save it for 4 years during the time that you're in school. Now you have some seed money to start your small business. Bam, that's one way.
Thank you, David. So my answer, generational wealth, and this idea that it should be easier for your kids. I grew up in a very lower middle class family. We had a very small ranch house in the suburbs of Chicago. I know that my parents wanted me to have more than they did. I have less than they did. I've been a renter since I was 18 years old. I'm 36 years old now. I can't imagine at what point I'm going to be able to own a home, just based off of the living wages that are available to folks. We haven't seen an increase in the federal minimum wage in forever. Who the hell can afford to live off of, what, $7.25 an hour? Nobody. So I think a big way that we can close that inequity gap is by establishing these big, bold, universal programs that includes universal health care, universal housing, universal education. And I've always firmly believed that if people didn't have to worry about how they're going to pay for their shelter, for their health care, and their education, they would be the most cultured, productive, most wonderful people of society. But when you are worrying how you're going to be able to pay your rent, you're not worrying about contributing to this greater idea of society. I think we would be a wonderful, great nation if we actually had guarantees of these basic human rights.
For me, higher education is what got me to this point. 18 years, I'm always going to say higher education, yes, but that's not for everyone. And what we're seeing in schools is a big shift. When I was growing up, I had sewing, I had carpentry, I still have my wood chest that I built in 9th grade. We had ceramics, skill classes. And in my district, I call it the little entertainment hub because we have Burbank, we're creating a new studios. I have the Plumbers for Headquarters. ATSI is there. I have so many union headquarters in my district. Jobs that, like my cousin, he owns his own plumbing company, makes way more money than I'll ever make. And these are great jobs that we need. If we're talking about we need to build so much more housing, who's gonna build it? I need labor, I need electricians at the door to help me build all of this. So I wanna make sure, like David mentioned, is apprenticeships right out of in high school so they can go straight into these jobs. I wanna make sure that I'm providing people that who wanna be teachers, healthcare workers, mental health therapists, a pipeline straight out of high school that's gonna pay their credentialing and then funnel them into the schools that we need them in, funnel them into the hospitals, the community clinics that we need them in, funnel them into the jobs where they live, so they're not spending or commuting an hour to 2 hours, people coming from Palmdale, because that's the only place where you can afford it. So I want to make sure that we have housing stipends for people who are going through these credentialing schools, because physicians get a housing stipend, and that's one of the only ones that get housing stipends while they're navigating school, and we know everyone needs it. So those are the type of things I want to make sure that I make it as easy as possible. And then lastly, on policy, to make sure that no developer can buy a single family home, and that you are the one who is trying to outbid with another person that looks like you, not a developer.
So this question actually kind of makes me sad, because as a mom of two, my parents immigrated to Chicago, actually, in the 60s. They achieved the American dream, and for me as a mom, the idea of wanting your kids to do better, and yet I can't even give them the clean air, the clean water, the clean land, that always kills me. As far as creating generational wealth, what has been said here, our students shouldn't be bogged down with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt for a higher education. The state schools, they should be free for our kids so that they can, if that is their choice, they can pursue a higher education. But like Caroline was saying, that's not for everyone. I do want to create a California Civilian Climate Corps where it can teach green jobs and a just transition to clean energy jobs. As far as my own kids, I genuinely I feel bad. This makes me sad. I feel really upset that I can't do more to ensure their future. But hopefully in Sacramento, I can fight for policies that will help them ease their burden of debt when they're adults.
So I talk a lot about income and wealth inequality, and this was a question that addresses that. Since the 50s, so we didn't always have corporate influence and super PACs, right? But it made a huge influence, and we're all talking about it. But if you see Robert Reich, he talks about inequality for all. If you look at when corporations, because unions used to be the only special interest, when corporations started putting in money and big business started getting involved, we actually saw, because in the 50s, income inequality was very small. But it was after the 50s, we saw it increase and increase and increase, right? And in California, it's actually the largest income inequality gap in the entire nation, right? And continual expanding, it's not static, right? So it's getting worse and worse. So how do we root it out, right? Honestly, the root of the issue, and everyone talks about great policies, I'll talk about something different. The root of the issue is overturning Citizens United, number one. But we can do a lot at the state level to limit the influence of corporate money. Sorry, I talk about Assembly Lee a lot because he's the only one of the progressives up there. But he introduced a clean money bill to stop the influence of foreign money, in our state elections, which would kind of eliminate a lot of corporate money, right? That is really important. The other thing for upward mobility, though, I think I'm going to talk about housing a little bit. Okay, so again, I'm going to emphasize decommodifying housing is really important. I don't believe housing should be sort of something that's commodified that people can make profit from. It should be a right? And we can do that. So like in other countries like around the world, right, that do this, the government provides not just housing for low-income people, they provide housing, mixed income housing, right? And unlike in California, where we pay actually the most of our money, more than any other place in the nation, not just in this country, in the nation, by the way, in rent and mortgage, right? There are places where you're paying rent and mortgages that's like, believe it or not, 4% of what you make. Only 4% is spent on housing. Imagine how much expendable income you have, how much you can pass on to your kids, right? So I wanted that. And the other thing is, I do believe a just transition, because if you don't have a planet, none of this will matter, right? So we gotta ensure that we fight for a just transition, renewable energy. That's gonna create new jobs. One thing I do as a teacher is I really believe in after-school programs, trade, and everything like that. So, the future is gonna be jobs in our infrastructure, jobs that are gonna help us with just transition, and that's, I feel like, gonna help our youth that are coming up. And also, as Mia said, tuition-free public college. I think opportunity should be accessible to everyone. College is not for everyone, but if they wanna go to college, trade school, whatever it is, it should be tuition-free.
Thank you. So, sorry, how much time do we have left? Just
We
so I
have
can-
9 minutes and 40 seconds.
We have 9 minutes. So I want to ask one fundamental question, maybe towards the end, wrapping it up. And if you guys could be, brief with it, so I'll try to make the question brief. Given the current state within California and the United States, where the massive amount of oil drilling we have, the massive reliance we still have on fossil fuels, what would you say is one feasible aspect of a Green New Deal type policy that you can reasonably see being implemented within the next 5 years, or within the end of your, for example, first term? I mean, for House of Representatives, it's a little bit short, but within a short period of time that could have material impacts, not just blanket goals, blanket statements, but material impacts for young people all across California, Los Angeles, and the United States.
Okay, one thing, there's a lot we can do, assembly term is 2 years, so you're right, can't do everything in 2 years. A Green New Deal, it needs to happen yesterday, but, okay, so, there's a couple of things we can do, right? One thing is, I know the county passed, and the state now passed, right, the buffer zone bill. My fear is agencies right now, because if you see how our state agencies have scored in implementing it, they're really bad. So honestly, I want to make sure that since that finally passed, the state legislation, the governor signed it, that we implement that. I know in my district that'll make a huge difference. There are much higher rates of asthma and cancer because of that. So that's one tangible thing I'll do. I guess I can be short. Maybe one other thing I'll say I would do is two things. I think public transit, right, is huge because our cities, right, like maybe talked about, is built on cars. And I get that, yes, we need to electrify cars, but I think we need to think long term. Cars are not the future. We need to think about communities that are walkable, bikeable, using public transit. So I'm really proud to be endorsed by Streets for All, and in my district particularly, there's a high incident of traffic incidents, high incident of surrounded by freeways. We don't need to expand our freeways. We need to think about infrastructure in terms of taking our dependence away from cars and towards biking, walking, and public transit. And we can do that. Even in one assembly term, we can start building that infrastructure.
I love that so much. Okay, so for me, I am the first legislative candidate ever endorsed by Solar Rights Alliance. Big believer, a supporter of solar. As I mentioned, my opponent authored bills to kill rooftop solar. So I said, I lived in my home in Elysian Valley, 16 years, and you've heard my electric bill is crazy. So we kept trying. We kept trying to invest in solar, couldn't afford it. Finally, rooftop solar is at this point where it is accessible for lower income communities like ours, where they could start implementing and using them on libraries, churches, schools. In fact, the Black Church Green Alliance, a couple weeks ago, during the excessive heat wave, they complained about my incumbent's bill because of the fact that they were, oh my God, hold on, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find thoughts. They were, because what they do, the solar power, they are running solar power, they are able to feed their community. They are able to, especially the unhoused, they are able to take their care of their neighbors. And the thing is, the more that we can implement solar power within communities, if schools have it, if churches, libraries, and you combine those all together, it can create enough power for the rest of the community, those who cannot afford it. And so for me, that's major top priority that we could implement.
I'm looking to represent a district, just like Fatima, has one of the poorest air quality because we have waste management, we have aggregate recycling centers. The Valley Generating Plant that had a leak is in my district. One of the highest rates of children going to the ER for asthma. So 2 things I want to do in my first term, state senate is 4 years, is create mandates for enclosing recycling centers. I have one in particular that whenever you drive on the 5 freeway going south and you pass down Sun Valley, you look to your right and there's 50 feet pile high of debris, of dust, that at any given point you can feel the layer of dust around. This is where people this is what they're breathing in. So I want to make sure that AQMD actually has teeth to come down, and I've filed so many complaints and nothing ever happens with them. So those are the things that I'm looking to do with that. Second is mandates for asphalt, to removal of asphalt of all our children's schools in the state of California, so they can have a place where they can play. And that will drastically impact our temperature. And if you've ever been in the valley in July or September, don't. It is 120 degrees, and I know that's going to really, we're going to see a physical change there.
Thank you. So, I want to say that I recognize that when one is elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, it is a federal position. What I want to see if I'm elected is I want to be a community-driven representative. I don't want to be somebody who's just living in Washington and phoning it into my district. We need representatives on a federal level who are collaborating on a local level to actually see changes for their constituents. So on a federal level, things that I want to see are, first of all, a drastic reduction in oil and gas leases and a drastic reduction in subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, with the eventual goal of eliminating all subsidies and all oil and gas leases, while simultaneously increasing subsidies for renewable energy resources and increasing leases of federal lands for the application of renewable energy sources. And so that's what I think about when I think about some of the big ways we can change things on a federal level, but how do we affect changes here in our own neighborhoods, in our own communities? And I think of places like, in the San Fernando Valley, right? My neighboring district, Angelica Duenas, who, by the way, wanted to be here tonight, but she's sick. One of the things that she has been fighting for is the closure of the LADWP Sun Valley Regeneration Plant. There have been methane leaks for years that are directly impacting the surrounding communities. And what are the surrounding communities consisting of? Black, brown, and indigenous people, people of color, marginalized communities. And so these are the changes that we can make that are actually going to make a difference in our communities. And it doesn't seem like our politicians at Given give a damn about folks in those communities that are suffering. So part of environmental justice really does mean that we are making reparations for our communities.
Woo! All right. So Angelica, maybe, and myself, we have a lot to do when we get to Congress. We're called DAM. Get it? DAM! All right. Yeah. Okay. So we need to. In 2015, the ban on crude oil export was undone by members of Congress. We need to ban that again. And banning that would actually be equivalent to the closing down of about 45 coal plants. So we need to do that immediately. The next one is in regards to funding the EPA. The EPA, if you look at the funding, it's been decreasing over the years, and they've been short for a long time, and they continue to be short. And so part of Congress members' roles are not just co-sponsoring. For some reason, they think that they're just co-sponsoring, but they also need to be playing their activism and organizing and meeting agency heads and organizing at the President's Mansion. In regards to Green New Deal, we have a Green New Deal for public housing, schools, cities, and a civilian climate corps. We need a Green New Deals for families. We need a Green New Deals for communities. We don't see those bills in Congress, and each Congress member, if they're part of the so-called alleged progressive caucus, should be co-governing with their communities to talk about what that means and looks like, and originating from their own communities first and bringing that back to DC. And an example of that is we rolled out our federal transit policy page in collaboration with Streets for All, a local activist org who we've been endorsed by as well. And we need to focus on local issues that matter, so please check out our website.
Thank you, thank you. I want to thank all of our federal and state candidates. I I wish we could go further, but our camera is literally about to die. Thank you guys so much for coming out to the Youth Climate Strike, youth-led candidate forum. I think it's so important that we have youth lead a lot of these discussions. Are you guys willing to sign the Sunrise Pledge?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you guys so much for coming out. And yeah, my name is Keon. Have a great day.
Happy birthday! Keon, it's your birthday?
Cut. It's what? 100%. It's
To you, happy birthday to you. Happy